Hello, everybody. So this is, oh gosh, what lesson is this? Lesson 2, sorry. So assignment number 2, Game Changer, Pearl Harbor. So this assignment talks to you about Pearl Harbor and kind of how the United States got involved in World War II because of that. So your objective today is that you will be able to describe the attack at Pearl Harbor and explain how it changed the course of World War II. Okay. So you'll learn how Pearl Harbor affected the course of World War II and kind of how it changed the game. So a term to know that you're going to need to know for today is infamy, which is evil and wrongdoing or a disgrace. Okay. And that's actually the title of the speech that we're going to read. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and scroll down and get started on this lesson. The first thing that you need to do when you open up this document today is you're going to read the speech by President Roosevelt and then answer the question below. Then read about the attack on Pearl Harbor and complete the timeline. Okay, so we are just focusing on this first part right now. So we're going to read the speech by President Roosevelt and then answer the question at the bottom. So FDR, or Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was president at the beginning of World War II. So he gave this speech after the attack on Pearl Harbor. So yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation, and at the solicitation of Japan, was still in conversation with the government and its emperor, looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific. All right, so I'm going to pause at the end of this paragraph and go back and highlight things that I think that are important. So I'm going to highlight this part where it says the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. All right, and I'm going to highlight it in a color that I like. Let's do blue today. All right. We also want to highlight this part where it says the United States was at peace with this nation, right? Because that's important to us because we know that tells us that the attack was very out of the blue, that the United States did not expect it at all. So we're going to move on to the next paragraph. Indeed, 1 hour after Japanese air squadrons had commenced bombing in the Japanese ambassador to the United States and his colleagues delivered to the Secretary of State a formal reply to a recent American message. While this reply stated that it seemed useless to continue the existing diplomatic negotiations, it contained no threat or hint of war or armed attack. All right, so I'm going to highlight this last sentence here because this tells us the United States and Japan had been in communication before the attack happened. It will be recorded that the distance of Hawaii from Japan makes it obvious that the attack was deliberately planned many days or even weeks ago. During the intervening time, the Japanese government has deliberately sought to deceive the United States by false statements and expressions of hope for a continued peace. Okay, so what he's saying there is that Japan and Hawaii are too far apart. So I'm going to highlight the part where it says distance of Japan or distance of Hawaii from Japan. Right, because like he says, that makes it obvious that it was something that was planned out. Right, and I'm going to highlight this part where it says the Japanese government deliberately sought to deceive the United States, right? Because what this tells us is, again, that they had further planned this attack. The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. Very many American lives have been lost. In addition, American ships have been reported torpedoed on the high seas between San Francisco and Honolulu. So I'm going to highlight this part where it says very many American lives have been lost, because that's going to become important to us later when we talk about why the United States got involved in the war. Yesterday, the Japanese government also launched an attack on Malaya. Last night, Japanese forces attacked Hong Kong. Last night, Japanese forces attacked Guam. Last night, Japanese forces attacked the Philippine Islands. Last night, the Japanese attacked Wake Island. This morning, the Japanese attacked Midway Island. So all of these different places tell us that Japan is launching a lot of attacks all at one time. So I'm just going to highlight all of these different places because it tells us the important thing that Japan is doing this on purpose. And on a bunch of different places, right? Not just the United States, right? Because Hong Kong is definitely not in the United States. So I'm just going to go through and highlight all these different places. Okay. Japan has therefore undertaken a surprise offensive extending throughout the Pacific area. The facts of yesterday speak for themselves. The people of the United States have already formed their opinions and well understand the implications to the very life and safety of our nation. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense. All right, I'm going to highlight this part here because he's doing what he can as president to make sure that the United States is protected. Always will we remember the character of the onslaught against us. No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory. So I'm going to highlight this part right here because he believes the Americans will be victorious. I believe I interpret the will of Congress and the will of the people when I assert that we will not only defend ourselves to the uttermost, but will make very certain that this form of treachery shall never endanger us again. Hostiles exist. There is no blinking at the fact that our people, our territory, and our interests are in grave danger. With confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph. So help us God. I ask that Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7, was a state of war has existed between the United States and Japanese Empire. All right, so there he's asking that the United States declare war on Japan. All right, so what impact do you predict the events described in this speech would have on the war? Click in this box to type your answer. So we're just going to click in here, and I'm going to hit enter 1 time, 2 times, so that I am not on the same line as the question, and then I'm going to unclick italicize because I don't want my answer to be in italics. So the question here again is saying, what impact do we predict that the events described in the speech would have on the war? Right, so if we scroll back up and reference the text, we know that Japan attacked multiple places, right? Places not just in the United States. And we know that this was an attack brought deliberately, and it was an attack that was planned many days or even weeks ago. I'm going to highlight that part also. Okay, so our answer down here can say that because Japan attacked multiple places, not just the U.S., and because it was deliberately planned, the United States took measures to protect herself and FDR requested that the U.S. declare war. But we also want to make sure that in our answer to this question, why would I want to say that? We also want to make sure that our answer to this question predicts the further events. So we know that FDR was asking Congress to declare war, but we can go ahead and assume that Congress will grant that, even though we know, right? But we're going to go ahead and assume that Congress will grant that because this was obviously an act of terrorism against the United States. So because this was an obvious act of terrorism against the United States, Congress will grant the declaration of war against Japan. Okay. And this answers the question here for us. All right. So after reading the speech by FDR, we know that by the time the attack on Pearl Harbor occurred, things were looking very bleak for the Allies. All right, so the Allies at this time did not include the United States. Germany and Italy had much of Europe and North Africa under their control, while Japan, the third major nation of the Axis powers, had taken over land in China and all around Southeast Asia and the Pacific. So in this lesson, you're going to learn more about the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor and how it changed the course of the war, right? So because Japan was the third major nation in the Axis powers, and they attacked the United States at such a premeditated state, the United States was effectively brought into the war on the side of the Allies, right? So because things were looking very bleak for the Allies, it just furthermore instated this fact that the United States needed to join the war. Okay, so moving on, at this point, we know that the Axis powers are effectively winning the war. But because Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, the United States comes into the war on the side of the Allies. So what you're going to do here now is read the passage and complete the timeline activity. So you're going to read this passage and highlight just like we just did. And then once you're done reading, you're going to come down here and create a timeline of events using the passage, the attack. Okay. It says you should include at least 6 events, and for each one, include a short 2 to 3 sentence summary of that event. So make sure you choose events that are essential to the telling of a story of Pearl Harbor. Be as creative as you want with the font, colors, and clip art. So what I'm going to tell you is to click at the end of the directions and hit enter twice, and then you can unitalicize it. And then you're just going to literally type the date and then a short 2 to 3 sentence summary. So I'm going to scroll back up just to the top, and I'm just going to do one for you. We know that the attack was on December 7th, 1941. Okay, so the attack by Japan on Pearl Harbor was on December 7th, 1940. All right, and then behind that, I'm going to type a short 2 to 3 sentence summary of that event. All right, just to get a little bit creative with it, I'm going to highlight the date. I'm going to change the color of the font. I'm going to do a custom color. I'm going to do pink color. And then I'll hit enter again once I've typed my 2 to 3 sentence summary, which I'm not going to do, but you guys are. I'll hit enter again, and then I will type in another date and maybe change it to a different color or that same color, just depending on what I want. I'm also going to consider changing the font, so I can highlight this and come up here to the font, and I'm going to change it to something, there we go, something cool. All right. And then you guys will have at least 6 events in your timeline and then a short 2 to 3 sentence summary after each of these dates. If you want to include any clip art or photos into the timeline, you can, but it's certainly not required. And then after you do your timeline entirely, you'll come down here to these follow-up questions, and you will click behind the question, hit enter a couple times. And if you want to answer the question and then highlight your answer, that way we can see it a little better, that would be great, right? So that is all you're going to do for this lesson. If anybody has any questions, as always, shoot us an email. Let us know that you've got questions, and we will be happy to answer those.